Now, it's important in an academic piece of writing to identify the argument the author is trying to make. And you do this by distinguishing between facts and opinions. Facts are usually supported with evidence or a strong likelihood or common sense, such as the number of people with access to the internet worldwide is increasing. Opinions are not based on any research and are often characterized by value judgments or emotive language, such as this is a devious attempt by the government to cheat taxpayers. By identifying the facts and opinions in an academic argument, you are able to distinguish what it is the author is trying to convince you of. Now, to do this, you need to use the critical approach. In the critical approach, you analyze and reduce complex pieces of information into their simple elements and examine the relationship between them. You adopt a critical attitude to all the elements, questioning their meaning, evaluating the evidence for each point they're trying to make, and judging the value of the importance of this. Finally, if you decide, for example, that a source is useful, you need to be able to present the judgment that you've made on that source in your assignment. To critically analyze some piece of writing, you need to ask the following two types of questions. Firstly, questions designed to clarify facts of the text. So in other words, what is the text about? Secondly, questions about making judgments from this text, such as what are the evidence for the facts the authors have written, how valid are those sources, are they first-hand or second-hand accounts, are they supported by other sources, and are there, for example, any biases or inaccuracies that you can identify? I'm going to illustrate this for you using the following example. This is Barbara Smith from Wisconsin, and she says society would be better off using Android phones than Apple phones. Apple phone screens are much more likely to break because they are not protected by Gorilla Glass. Now, there are many critical thinking questions you can ask about this topic, and I've listed a few on this slide. Firstly, my question is, who is Barbara Smith from Wisconsin? Has she conducted some sort of well-designed research project on this subject? How can she make the statement that Apple phone screens are much more likely to break? What evidence does she have? Things about biases are always important to consider. So in this case, I've listed two. Firstly, does she work for a company that would benefit from selling more Android phones? As this would indicate a bias in her statement. The other question you can ask is, does she work for Apple? Because if she does, that might lend credence to her statement and make it more valid for use. All of these questions do not indicate that Barbara is wrong. All it means is that you need more information before you believe that what she said is correct. And this is, in essence, the critical thinking approach. So how do you read your sources critically? I have provided some practical tips in the next few slides. Firstly, start by determining the central claims or purpose of the text. What is the text about? Then assess how the authors make these claims throughout the essay or the piece of writing. Make judgments about the context of the text. For example, what audience is it written for? Are there any scholars with differing viewpoints? Does the author have a conflict of interest? And so on. Then examine the evidence the text employs. Does the evidence actually support what the authors say it does? Are appropriate statistics used if they are necessary? And then assess the strengths and weaknesses of the argument the authors are trying to make. For example, are there certain things that could be better supported? Are there gaps, leaps, or inconsistencies in the author's statements that need to be filled more appropriately? And lastly, could the evidence be interpreted in a different way? It's also important to remember that critical thinking not only applies to what you read, but also to what you write, because you need to think of your own ideas. All of us have ideas that have been influenced by what we see, what we've experienced, what we've read, and so on. This means that sometimes you may not be a good source of information on a topic. You need to consider the information you are going to use in your essay and whether this is a good source of information to be talking about. You may, of course, have excellent personal experience that is a perfect source of information for a topic, in which case that is a good thing, but you always need to consider you as your own source of information. Now, thinking critically is, in other words, a process. You have a topic of issue, and you need to describe it, so questions like what, when, where, and who are important. But then you also need to analyze them. So why did something happen? What if something different had happened in this case? And finally, you need to evaluate this topic. So in essence, that is, so what? Why should anyone care? What's next? So you describe, analyze, and evaluate a topic.